Welcome, everyone. Welcome to our long-awaited Parent Information Night on Supported Employment with Jennifer Joyce from the Department of Developmental Disabilities and also Jessica Cole from the Department of Vocational Rehab Services. Jennifer has been working in the field for a number of years. She's been in the Department of Developmental Disabilities since 2011, and she has been working dedicated really to improving employment outcomes for people with disabilities throughout her career. And she's been the recipient of a number of awards. The Rebecca McDonald Leadership Award, both nationally and in New Jersey. She's also received Outstanding Professional of the Year Award from ARC Ocean County Chapter and also Leadership Award from Plan New Jersey. And Jessica Cole has been working for 8.5 years in supported employment at the Hackensack office in Department of Vocational Rehab Services. So we have wonderful people that will be here to share wisdom with us. And I just want to take a moment for a few things. First of all, totally apologize for any glitches. I'm still kind of working through being at the controls, but I'm getting better at this as we go, the more I do it. So tonight's meeting is hosted by the Office for Pastoral Ministry with Persons with Disabilities for the Archdiocese of Newark, also hosted by And a Child Shall Lead Us. It's a group for mothers of individuals with disabilities that has been meeting for over 10 years now. And as parents, we all want to launch our kids into the world to the best of their ability. And so that really, and the conversations around that is really what has led to scheduling this meeting. And so we're so glad that you could join us. It's going to be a simple flow. There'll be times to ask questions during the presentation. They'll break it up, Jen and Jess will break it up for allowing for questions. I wanted to just show a short video that presents just some really thinking about new possibilities with supported employment and possibilities for the employment of individuals with intellectual and developmental disabilities, because too often they're not provided with the supports to be able to actually fulfill their potential. And that's really one of the reasons why the church is interested, because Catholic social teaching is very concerned with human flourishing. And so access to education and supports is really important. Only 27% of adults with IDD are actually in the labor force in New Jersey. So we have lots of work to do. I'm going to start with this short video. I think we're going to scrap the video then. I apologize for that. I think that's a technical issue I should have set up before. I will send the link, and I'll send a few other links to you all after our evening, because it just really opened my eyes to the possibilities, because businesses have also found that a good thing hiring individuals with disabilities, they're very faithful and attentive. They show up for work. They also found increasing the bottom line. And Walgreens is one company that has done a lot of work in terms of creating a culture that is just us. There's no we and them, it's just us. So I am going to turn it over to Jennifer now.
Thanks, Anne. Hi, everyone.
Sure.
First of all, thanks for arranging this. I know we wanted to do this in person a few weeks ago, and that ended up not happening for obvious reasons. So I'm glad we're able to get together today and kind of kick off this discussion. I think this is probably a first step in this discussion, and we'll have more to come and hopefully more face-to-face opportunities where we can, when we can actually be in rooms together again. But I wanted to just start with why it's important to even talk about employment when it comes to individuals with intellectual and developmental disabilities. It's often a discussion that people don't have or even think of as an opportunity for their loved ones with an intellectual or developmental disability. So I wanted to start there and kind of go through why I feel so passionate about it myself. So one of the reasons I find it an important discussion is whenever I do presentations on employment, and I've been doing them for a really long time now. I appreciate Anne didn't talk about how many years I have actually been doing this, but it's over 20 at this point. I've had lots of discussions with people with disabilities, with family members and loved ones of people with disabilities, with support staff and advocates and caregivers for people with disabilities. And I often have had discussions about what are, either if you're a person with a disability, what are your hopes and dreams for yourself, or if you're the loved one of a person with a disability or a professional staff or whoever it may be connected to that person, what are your hopes and dreams for that loved one? And the list is always pretty similar. There's a lot of common things that come up. in that list. And if you're thinking of it right now, there's probably things that you're thinking of that you hope and dream for your loved one. Some of the common things that come up is personal growth for that person, independence for that person, fiscal stability, a sense of belonging, relationships, a purpose, a meaningful life, health and safety, happiness, a place to live. And those are things that are commonly coming up in discussions when I have them with people, as well as just general kinds of things that come up. And if you look at that list, you could go through that list and sort of say, okay, how can I help that person with personal growth? And come up with a variety of ideas of how to do that. Maybe they can take classes, or maybe they go to a rehabilitation program and learn some things about how to, daily living skills and grow in that area. How do I help someone to be independent? I can, again, come up with a list of ways to do that. Let's give them things to do within the household, like chores and things like that, responsibilities in the household, or let's, maybe have them go out with a friend, or other kinds of things without mom and dad there, or whatever it might be. But if you look at the list, the one thing that really addresses every single one of those hopes and dreams for someone is employment. To me, it's like the easiest way. If someone gets a job, all of these things automatically get addressed in one fell swoop. So obviously we all grow at work every single day, and we're all learning about all these new, or not even really new, but social platforms that we can use to have meetings like this now, through our jobs usually. We become more independent. Obviously, fiscal stability comes through working, having a sense of belonging and being able to make relationships with the people that you work with. I think, we all know tons of people who have met their spouses at work, or have, obviously their group of friends comes from work. Having that purpose or meaning, we're seeing now with people that maybe are not working right now, whether you have a disability or not, what that's doing for their sense of purpose and their reason to get up every day. I was thinking just a little while ago, even, I put on makeup for the first time in a really long time today. And, I don't know if that's really a purpose or a meaningful life to have makeup on, but it was something that I was like, this kind of feels good to like actually care about what I look like today. Health and safety, we've seen, obviously, I have unfortunate stories of people who have worked their whole lives and retired, and then their health has declined after they retired, or other stories of people who, sometimes I live by myself, and my mom will get concerned about me because I'm living by myself, and I'll always say to her, like, people are going to know if I'm having a problem because I go to work every day. If I don't show up at work, they're going to wonder where I am, and that taps into my health and safety. And, all of those other things that we talked about. And that's why I feel so passionately about employment. It's, obviously seeing people change their lives by getting a job, and the excitement of getting a job and all of those things. But to me, it's meeting hopes and dreams for the people that we care so much about. To me, that's the reason we do this, is to have people get to all those hopes and dreams with one easy, well, not easy, but one activity, one job that can sort of address all those things. And then it becomes, the difficult part is, how do we do it? So how do we know what kind of career employment direction for someone to pursue? And it is a journey. And I think it's important to think of it as a journey, and not just, I think that sometimes, for all of us, we can get very frustrated with the process of trying to find a job. And when you add disability to it and other complications related to that, it obviously can even become more of a journey for that person. So some people know exactly what they want to do. I have a 7-year-old nephew, and if you ask him what he wants to be when he grows up, he wants to be a garbage man. It's what he's wanted to be since he was like 2. We'll see if that changes, but he certainly, that's the direction he wants to go in. That's what he wants to be. And obviously some of us have had that experience in our own life. And that's the same for people with disabilities. They can know exactly what they want to do. And that's what they want to be. That's the career path that they want to choose. That's what when they first meet with a counselor at the Division of Voc Rehab, they're going to say, I want to be X, Y, or Z. And sometimes those things are the right match for the individual. So it may make complete sense that they want to do that. They'll definitely have the skills to do that. They have the capabilities to do that. It's an area where there are jobs available for the individual, and they can get to those jobs. They're not far away from where they are, or they have transportation options to get there. And that's awesome, because that makes it obviously much easier. You can just start working with people to help them find that type of a job as they're moving forward. For other people, they may know what they want to do, but it's not necessarily something that's going to be a reality for them. So I've had many conversations with people with intellectual and developmental disabilities who want to be airplane pilots, and that's just not going to be the reality for them because of all of the training you have to go through. You have to have a certain number of hours in the air and teaching and instruction in that area. There's obviously some math kinds of things that you need to know that I wouldn't even know how to get into. And it just might not be something that that individual, again, whether they have a disability or not, is right for them to become an airplane pilot. So then the journey becomes, well, what is it about being an airplane pilot that appeals to that person? And we've had many conversations about that with people, where we end up finding out that they just really like airplanes and want to be around airplanes. So then maybe it's a matter of, let's help them get a job with an airline. Let's help them get a job at the airport in a terminal, those kinds of things. Maybe it's that they want to wear a uniform. We get that a lot. So then it becomes, okay, well, we can help you get a job where you wear a uniform, and let's look into that direction. So we're still satisfying what their interests are, or what they want to do and what their hopes and dreams are, but in a different kind of way. And I would say that I will never say to somebody, no, you can't be an airplane pilot, but we would certainly have that discussion to go further and dig deeper. And then there's some people who have no idea what they want to do. Maybe they haven't had a lot of experiences in their life where they would be able to even understand the different kinds of jobs or what they might be. Or, maybe one day it's, I want to be a garbage collector, and the next day it's, I want to be an airplane pilot, and the next day it's, I want to be a singer, and the list goes on and on. And for them, we obviously have to do a little bit more to really get to understand them. And we call that the discovery process, where we're really digging deeper into that particular person to find out what that person may want to do and what they would be good at. So that's where we really need to get to know the person, which I know sounds silly to you guys as parents, because of course you already know the person, but those of us that are professionals do not, and we'll rely on you to help us with that. So it's really looking at what's the person's hopes and dreams, what are their skills, what are their interests, and where are they going to need the support. And we kind of take all of that information like a puzzle and put that puzzle together to kind of figure out types of jobs that'll work for that person. And there may be one singular job that looks like it's the perfect one, and that's it. And there could be obviously some options for that person, depending on what it is that they're good at, what they like to do. So how do we get that information? Obviously, the first way would be to actually talk to the person. How shocking. And ask them questions about, what do they like to do at home? What do they enjoy doing for fun? In their free time, what are they looking forward to doing? Now we could even have the conversation of, when you can step outside of your house, what would it be that you would be the first thing you'd want to do? And that information, whether it's specific to a job or not, gives you good information about potential work opportunities. So I may have a conversation with someone, or I'll be looking through the records for that person, some planning materials, and see that they really enjoy helping out at the house with their pets. They really like feeding Fluffy every morning, taking Fluffy for a walk. Are there any dogs actually named Fluffy? That's kind of a cat name, isn't it? Maybe the cat goes for walks, who knows? Baiting Fluffy, all of those kinds of things. And in doing that, that gives me information about, okay, this is someone who, at least in their own setting, likes animals. And then we can take that to the next level for that particular person to see what that might look like. You want to talk to the person's parents, their loved ones, their friends, their support system. If they're just coming out of school, talking to the people, their teachers and the school personnel that they work with, to get a good picture too. That's always interesting too, because sometimes parents have a very different perspective in terms of what that individual likes to do or is good at than that individual has of themselves. I know when I first got into this field, if you had told my parents that I would be doing presentations regularly, they would have said, you're crazy, because I'm actually pretty shy and not somebody that's very outgoing. So for them to learn that I stand up in front of hundreds of people and do presentations regularly is a shock to their system. And then the other way beyond talking to all the people is to observe. And to me, that's the best way, and where you're really going to get the best information about what that individual is interested in and can and can't do. The other nice thing, there's a couple nice things about observation. It's that you can see it, but the other things are, if that person can't verbally communicate to you, you can't really have a conversation where they can say, I like to do X, Y, and Z, or I'm really interested in being this type of career. You can try different things with them based on what you may know that they enjoy doing and seeing what works or doesn't work. So an example I talk about a lot often is when I was doing job coaching myself X amount of years ago, there was someone who wanted desperately to be the host at Pizza Hut. He ate at Pizza Hut pretty regularly, and that was like a really cool job to him. That's what he wanted to be. And we weren't quite sure that that was really something he would enjoy doing, because his perspective or his perception of what it was I greet people when they come in the door. I get to have a cool little conversation with them and walk them to their table and have them sit. He didn't realize the other parts of that job, which is filling in bussing tables or at the cash register or folding pizza boxes and some of the other things you have to do. So what we did was what we call a situational assessment or a job sample with him, where we took him to an actual Pizza Hut and he did the tasks that would typically be done by somebody who was the host at a Pizza Hut. And the second he had to pick up a dirty napkin, he did not want to be the host at Pizza Hut anymore. And he didn't have to say that to us. I mean, he was capable of saying, ew, I'm not doing this. But if he wasn't somebody that communicated verbally, it would be very clear when they sort of refused to pick up the napkin, or behaviors start to come out when we ask them to pick up the napkin. I have had pizza boxes thrown at me during job samplings because they didn't want to actually fold the pizza box because it was too complicated for them. And, you know, obviously he didn't say, I don't like folding pizza boxes, but I got the hint when they were flying past my head. So that's one aspect of it that's really real good, is that it really gives us, for even someone who can't tell us what they like or don't like, we can see it as we're watching them, or we can see where they're struggling. The other thing is, it helps that person get a clear picture of what that job is. So that person that wanted to be the host at Pizza Hut, I didn't even actually have to tell him, you know what, I don't think this is the job for you. He was able to determine that for himself when he realized all these other parts of the job that he didn't like to do. I went to college as a physical therapy major. We all see how that turned out. And the reason I figured out I didn't want to be a physical therapy major anymore was we had to do volunteer hours. And we were supposed to do 100 of them. I did one at a hospital in the physical therapy department. And when I almost passed out like 5 times and was so grossed out with like bloody, stumpy feet and all kinds of gross things that I don't even want to remember now, I decided psychology might be a better option for me, because we have a vision of what a job may be in our head because of what we've seen on TV or what we've heard from friends or family members. But when it becomes reality and we actually see what that job is, sometimes it becomes more apparent that that's not right for us. So that's why, for me, an observation of what that person can and can't do through a situational assessment is really one of the best ways to get to know that person. So once we have all of that information about the person, whether it's through them telling us, through their loved ones telling us, through us observing them in different situations, we can look at, are there existing jobs that match for that individual? And again, sometimes there are. Sometimes it's really easy to see, oh, okay, this person would be a great host at Pizza Hut or another restaurant, and let's pursue that as a job for that person. And then we're going to start doing resumes and help them with interviewing, and maybe look at different opportunities by networking with potential employers for them. A couple of things that I just want to point out that are good ways that people are using now to help with people with disabilities and finding jobs. Resumes, a lot of times, because our guys haven't had a lot of experiences and a lot of experience in the community or a lot of experience with work, their resumes are not the most impressive. And there are ways to write some things in a resume that really is more skill-based than work experience-based. But obviously, a lot of people, when you look at a resume as an employer, you're going to look through work experience to see if that's going to match up with what you're looking for. What we're seeing a lot of people with disabilities do now are video resumes where they're actually performing the tasks that would be needed for that job to actually show that potential employer, look how I can do this, instead of a list of different things that they can look at and see, well, they don't have any experience in this area. So that's a good thing. The other thing is a lot of our guys do not interview well. Sometimes they're just way too honest. I've been in interviews where you want to kick the person under the table and tell them to stop talking because they're just giving way too much information. Or, you know, if they're on the spectrum, they sometimes may not be making good eye contact or have those social skills that people look for during an interview. And so for them, if you can talk to the employer about, you know, we want them to still do the interview because it's actually very important. Statistics have shown if the person with a disability goes through the same hiring process and the same training process as people without disabilities, they're more successful in their jobs and stay in them longer. But maybe we'll talk about something called a job trial for that person where we can say we'll have them interview. If you could give them a week or two to do a job trial with them where they get paid to do the job, and at the end of that period, you can assess whether you want to hire them officially or not. Sometimes that helps because then they can actually see that the person can do the job, and maybe they didn't portray that very well during an interview, but they could see that when they're actually doing the job itself. So we're then going to look at, are there businesses that would benefit from creating this type of job? So sometimes there's not a natural job that you can think of that matches that person. That person's unique. They may have specific support needs. That type of job may be a very competitive kind of job, and it's not likely that someone we're working with would get that job. And in those circumstances, that's where really networking with the businesses, and we'll talk about supported employment and the professionals that can do this. I'm not saying parents should be doing this. You guys have enough to do. Networking with the businesses to learn about what they need and really start looking at proposing different kinds of options for them. So we've had people, the classic example of this is the person that's gotten hired to roll silverware at a restaurant. That job was created because a job developer was out eating dinner or lunch or something at a restaurant and saw that the wait staff were getting behind schedule on waiting tables because they had to stop to be able to roll silverware into the napkins. And it was not working for the employer. It was not working for the customers. And they, in their head, because good job developers are always job developing, they're actually really annoying to hang out with. That job developer was like, I know somebody that can just do that. That could be their job, is to roll silverware, and they would do a great job with it. Then the wait staff is doing what they need to do. They're waiting tables. Silverware is ready when they need it. They don't have to stop to take on that task. And they talked to the business owner and said, this is what I saw. Here's how we can address that issue so you'll actually be benefiting from hiring this person and you're not losing money, you're actually making money. And that position got created for that particular person to be able to do that. And then sometimes it's whether there's a job that's an entrepreneurial opportunity. So some of our guys maybe want to do their own business, which is tricky for anybody. The success rate of anybody having their own business is tricky, but there's sometimes that works really well for our guys. So, you know, we've heard stories of people that maybe have started some sort of food business where they, you know, I know somebody that does like popcorn popping, and then they have a business of popcorn. We've had some people that shred documents, and they've sort of traveled to different businesses to be able to take that on. That's actually one of the better things for our guys because some of them can't read, so they're not, if the information is confidential, they're not even seeing confidential information, they're just shredding it. And all of that's really about getting out into the businesses, the professionals in this field doing that and getting to know those businesses, getting to know the people that work there and understanding where they have a need that we can fit into. And I just want to leave this portion of it by saying that you have to remember that it is a journey. And that our plan when we have a journey and when we want to find a job or when we have any kind of goal in life is, you know, we're going to start here and we're going to end here and it's going to be this straight line and oh, isn't it going to be great and perfect? And it never, ever, ever actually works out that way. In reality, our goals when we reach them have been things where it's like this swirly path where we've sort of had ups and downs and moments where we think, oh, I'm going to get that job, that interview, I killed that interview. And then you don't get the job for whatever reason, or you do get the job and it just doesn't work out and you end up losing it. And that's the same thing with the guys that we work with. And the thing that's discouraging is sometimes with our guys, with people with disabilities, we give up way too soon on them. and don't continue down that journey till they get to the end of the path. So you have that moment of, oh, this is their third job. This one isn't working out either. They're going to get fired, or they're going to end up leaving the job ahead of time because they know they're going to get fired. That's it. I give up. We've tried this and it's not working. All it really means is you just didn't find the right match yet. And I truly believe that for every person that has a disability, there's the right job. And if you keep looking, you're going to find it. And for some people, you find it in the first week. And for other people, it takes years. But you just got to keep plugging along and hope that sometimes you get to that point. And that's okay if it takes years in terms of the funding through the DDD system. We're okay with it taking years. There's other things you can do in the meantime and other services we provide that you can work on so you're not sitting at home, but always have that desire and that push to make it to the end of that journey with a job. So I can pause for a second for questions, Anne, if that's okay, or we can move on to Jess and maybe do questions then. Some of the questions that might come up during this may be answered when they learn more about the services that are available, but I'm fine with answering.
Okay, so we'll do a new share and bring up the website. So this is the opening screen. I'll put my mouse where you tell me to, Jess.
Hi, everybody. This is the website that we use. Typically, when I give a presentation, I don't have anything fancy. I usually don't have slides or anything, so I just get up and talk. But for this, we thought it would be better to have some sort of a visual for you guys. This is our website for the Department of Labor. It's careerconnections.nj.gov. And then if you want to go to the DVR specific area, you just hover over plan. And then in the center at the bottom there, you'll see Vocational Rehabilitation Services. And then that'll bring you directly to the DVR page. So I'm just going to be kind of talking off of this just so you guys have a visual and going off of this a little bit and a little bit of my own stuff. So basically, DVR, anybody who wants to find employment and has a disability, typically the first stop is DVR. If it's not DDD, they're coming to DVR because that's what we do. We're employment. We're an employment agency. So I'm just going to read you the mission statement of DVR to start off. The mission of the New Jersey Division of Vocational Rehabilitation Services is to enable eligible individuals with disabilities to achieve an employment outcome consistent with their strengths, priorities, needs, abilities, and capabilities. So right there in a nutshell, that's what we do. So who are we? What do we do? We're an employment agency. We're a state agency. We do receive state and federal funding though, and we assist individuals with disabilities to obtain and maintain employment. Who qualifies for our services? So any individual with a documented disability that wants to work competitively in an integrated setting and has the ability and capability to work independently, obviously not 100% independently, but at some point can work without constant supervision, would be eligible for our services. When I say disability, I really mean any kind of disability. We work with individuals who have mental health issues, cognitive issues, developmental, physical, substance abuse, mobility, any disability you could think of. We've probably worked with that person before. We work with students who have IEPs. We start with, transition students and help with the transition planning, and we can provide some services while the students are still in school. And basically the disability has to be documented and it has to show that there's an impediment to employment. So now I'm going to go more off of what you see at your screen to tell you about the services that we provide. So really at the heart of everything we do, and everybody that walks through our door is going to get this, is counseling and guidance. Okay, so that's really at the core of everything we do. Anytime you meet with your counselor, talk to your counselor, you're getting counseling and guidance services. We can help with resume writing, job search skills. We can tell you about classes that are offered in the building. Anything that you talk to your counselor about is considered counseling and guidance. The second service, which is probably the most popular service we offer, is supported employment. So that's, working with a job coach, working with a job developer to help you find employment, create that resume, look for a job, prepare for interviews. They can go with you to the interview sometimes And then once you get the job, they're going to help you maintain employment. So they're going to help you learn the job, make sure you're creating positive relationships with your supervisors and your coworkers, and make sure everything's okay. The hope is that the job coach will start to fade out, so it might be a little bit more intensive in the beginning. But from the DVR standpoint, we're not looking to have a job coach with the individual there the entire time that the person's employed. Typically, they do phase out and go into a long-term follow-along phase. We don't have job coaches at DVR. I'm not a job coach. We don't have them in our office. What we do is we contract out. So we have other vendors that we work with, and we pay for them to provide the services. It's no cost to the family or the individual. So that's probably our most popular service that we provide. But we do have some other things that we can do to help individuals prepare for or find employment. We could do evaluations, we do diagnostic exams, we could do medical exams, psychological evaluations, psychiatric evaluations, work capacity evaluations, basically anything that's needed to help the individual figure out, what's keeping them from employment and what they need to get there. We can also do restorative services. This is fulfilling a need in an area that will enhance a client's ability to secure employment. So things that are considered restorative would be prosthetics, psychotherapy, eyeglasses, hearing aids. Sometimes we could do vehicle modification, physical therapy, assistive technology, anything like that. Anything that's, extra that's needed to help that individual work competitively, we can potentially help fund. Let's see, what else do we do? We have short-term skills training, so we could send an individual to a technical school, a trade school, business school. We have some programs that run with some of our vendors that we have. They do some short-term programs, certificate programs, things like that. Continuing ed, basically if we feel that it's needed to help the individual gain the skills necessary to find a job in that area, then we could potentially help fund that. We can also provide college sponsorship. So some individuals, they want to go to college, whether it be Bergen Community for 2 years, maybe it's, Montclair State for 4 years, whatever it is, there's a potential for us to provide funding for that. Obviously, we have to work with the individual to determine if this is a viable option for them. We don't just let the person come in and say, oh, I want to go to college, and we open up a checkbook and write them a check and say, go ahead. We have to work with them and make sure this is something that DVR can support, that it's viable, that they have the academic skills, the ability, the okay from their doctor sometimes to pursue a college degree. And I also want to mention that, some of these things are considered cost services. So we do have to look at the individual's financial situation or the family's finances. Things like restorative services, so like hearing aids, prosthetics, vehicle modifications, things like that, they are cost services. So we do have to look at the family's financials. If the individual is an SSI or an SSDI recipient, then they're automatically eligible for cost services. So right there, off the bat, we know that they're okay. They could get those services from us. Let's see what else. Training, any training, college training, short-term training, anything like that is also a cost service. So we're looking at the finances. But things like counseling and guidance and support employment and any evaluations that we do, all that is considered to be a no-cost service. So we don't look at finances or anything for that. Oh, I also want to mention that we have a program called Project Search. I don't know if anyone's heard of that, but we work with DDD to do that also. So Project Search is an internship experience for the individual where they're working on site at the host site, and they get to do 3 internships on site to try to, get some work experience, figure out their interests, see what they're good at. It looks really good on a resume. It's a 10-month program. Right now we have a student program running at Holy Name and an adult program at Newbridge Medical Center. So that's something that DVR is helping to fund, DDD is helping to fund, and it's been working really well. Let's see what else. So how do we establish eligibility? how do we determine if someone's eligible for our services? First and foremost, we need records, okay? We need medical records confirming a documented disability. They could be medical records, they could be from a doctor, a surgeon, a neurologist, psychologist, psychiatrist, as long as we have medical records, and they have to be current, up to date. IEPs, if you had an IEP when you were in school and it's a static disability, chances are we could still use that IEP. And if for some reason we can't get records or you lost them all in a flood or something, we have a doctor, a psychologist that comes to our office and we can do an evaluation, no cost to you guys, to establish eligibility. So that's basically everything that we do. I'm just going to briefly tell you about the process now and how to get started, because some of you might be like, oh, this sounds great. What do I do? I don't even know how. What does the process look like? So basically, you have to fill out the referral form, which Anne has on the screen right now. So this is the referral form. This is the first step in getting started. So you fill out that referral form, you send it to our office. It's always best to send records with it because it'll just speed up the process for you, because like I said, we need the records to make you eligible. So if we get the referral form without records, we can start the process. It'll just take longer to really, give you services. So we get the referral, we get the records, your case will get assigned to a counselor. Once it gets assigned to a counselor, you'll get a letter in the mail saying, hi, I'm Jess, I'm your counselor, call me for an appointment. Once you make that appointment, you come in, you meet with your counselor. We call that first appointment the survey appointment or intake appointment. And that's when we start, getting your basic information, talking to you about your interests, your past work history, your disability, your impediments to employment, and things like that. And then after we open up your case and you apply for services, we're going to start working to develop a job goal. So this is kind of like that discovery phase that Jen was talking about. We want to know what you like to do, what you're good at doing, what your interests are. Like Jen said, oh, I want to be a pilot. Okay, that might not be the best option, but what do you like about it? We like to talk to them, figure out what they like about it, how we can get you in a related area, related field. We really want to develop that job goal with the individual, but it does have to be something that's viable and it's a good match for them. And it has to be something that's in demand. So, sometimes they want to be something that, is few and far between. Oh, I want to be an astronaut. Okay, I haven't seen many job leads out there for an astronaut. But like Jen said, we talk to you to figure out what about that do you like and try to find a good match for you. And then once we do agree upon that vocational goal, that's when we put you into a plan for employment, whether it's counseling guidance, support employment, or training. Then you get placed into the placed into the IPE, Individualized Plan for Employment. And then from there, hopefully you'll get employment soon. And then once you find employment, after 90 days, we consider you to be a success at that point. So your case will go into a rehab status. And I always tell everybody that you can always reapply for services. So this isn't like a one-time thing. After you get a job and keep a job and maybe your case goes into inactive status, if anything happens down the line, you need to come back to us, you can always reopen that case. And you can always just come back and you could get services again. So that's pretty much everything that we can do. I know I talked really fast and just threw a ton of information at you, so.
Questions? Joellen's got a question.
Yeah, thank you. Hi, thanks for your speech. I appreciate it. I'm wondering if we can start this procedure now, or do we have to wait till the pandemic is over?
Is that directed at DVR, DDD, both?
I think we're looking probably DVRS, is that right? I think that's what we're looking for, some support. Our daughter goes to college, she's 20 and will turn 21 June 25th. So I wondered, she is high functioning autism, and wondered what your best advice would be for us.
Okay, so I would certainly say, fill out the referral form now and you can send everything to the office. Our office isn't open right now. Yeah, we're not running anything.
That's fine.
Yeah, but you could start the process and get everything there, get everything in, and hopefully at some point we'll be back up and running and we can contact you.
The other question is for documentation. We have a letter from her pediatrician states that she is on the spectrum. Would that be enough for you, or do you need more proof?
Does it have a current date on it?
It was in, I think she was diagnosed in September of 2019.
Okay, I mean, that should be good enough, but we
Okay.
have forms too that we always give to clients and say, here, have your doctor fill this out. So sometimes
Okay.
we'll just do that so it has a current date on it.
Okay, I see. And then where is your location in regards to, we live in Scotch Plains, where would we have to go for an interview or intake?
Okay, so Anne, I don't know if you could pull up the
Yeah, where is
at the bottom. It's at all the way at the
very-
bottom of the page. Oh,
Okay.
up a little bit, up a little there.
Here we go.
DVRS, yeah.
So the field
So
locations.
yeah, so I'm from the Hackensack office, so that's from Bergen County, but every county has a DVR location.
Okay, thank you. Elizabeth Avenue in Elizabeth. Okay.
Yeah, so you could send it right to them.
Okay.
I sent everybody who registered, and if there was any late registered, so I'll send it out. Basically the websites, the handouts from tonight, as well as for Jess, I sent like the website contact information, so that then you'd be able to see where to be able to go back.
Oh, thank you, Anne. I appreciate that. Okay, that's fine. Yes, thank you. And then what benefit would she get from DDD? I'm not quite sure. I'm sorry, it's just so new for me. It's like
We'll get to
speaking
that.
a different.
I'm gonna do a whole DDD thing next.
Okay, thank you.
So I'm like at the end of the season when they have the big cliffhanger. I'm a cliffhanger.
Okay, I'll wait for you
Couple
then.
more minutes.
That's fine. Thank you. Thank you for answering. I appreciate it.
John asked in through chat, is DVRS the same service with the Veterans VOC rehab? And is there any age limit max to be able to be eligible for DVRS?
We're not the veterans vocational, we're strictly Department of Labor, Division of Voc Rehab, working with individuals with disabilities. So, I mean, we can work with veterans if they have a disability, but we don't work in conjunction with. And what was the other part of the question?
Well, may not be necessary, but is there any, was there an age limit, a maximum?
Nope, we work with anyone who wants to find employment. So I work with, individuals who are still in high school, and I work with people all the way into their 70s, if they want to find a job, there's no limit.
Okay. And then is the IEP enough for documentation to be eligible?
Typically, yes. I mean, if it's really old and the individual's like 45 and this is from when they were 21, we might do an evaluation to get some updated information. But if they're 23 and it's from, school and it's a static disability, typically that is enough.
You're up, Mary.
Thanks, Anne. Good to see you again.
Good to see you too.
And Jess, nice to see you too. Thank you
Hi,
so much.
how are you?
Great presentation. And Jess, when I saw you speaking, I had to hop in and ask the question. I need help. What? What do we do? We were actually registered with, and Jess is our case manager. We're going to go in to see her, and then the world changed.
Yeah.
Any advice, whether you're registered or not, for teenagers? Job prospects are going to be tough anywhere, and even summer activities are going to be tougher, because I'm not sure a lot of things are going to be held the way they've been held in the past. Is there any guidance you can give us as we move in towards the end of a school year and moving into the summer months on what to do with children like ours to try to get into this workforce?
Yeah, I mean,
in general, this is tough.
It is tough. I know for DVR, we have a grant program for summer internships for individuals who are still in high school. It was supposed to run again this summer. We had it last summer. I'm hoping we're going to be open and back up and running by the summertime. So, that is something we have. If there are individuals who are graduating and exiting and aging out of school, I mean, it's going to be tricky because they're kind of losing, the last few months of important services. So I think we're just going to have to be.
Is there any possibility, I guess one of the questions, my son is 20, he's graduated. If by chance we are fortunate to find him somewhere, but we know that he'll need some kind of support. Is there an emergency hotline we can call to say, we're in the system, we just landed this?
Yeah, so I mean, our office is still functioning to a degree.
Right.
If individuals are finding employment right now, and if their case is open, we can do job coaching services. So
Okay.
we're still, if someone's getting a job, our goal is still trying to do what we can to help them keep a job. So, I'm still working from home, obviously. You see me now. So we are still trying to do what we can do for the individuals, especially if they get a job. Yeah.
That's good to know, because he won't survive on his own, but maybe we can, if we're lucky to find something. Okay, great. Thank you so much.
Yep.
Okay, now we have Maria.
Hi, Anne.
Hi, Maria.
Hi, good evening. And Jen and Jess, thank you for this explanation, or the talk that you did, and it's really helping us in a bit of like listening and more information for us parents. So yeah, my son Joe is actually graduating this year. He's 21 years old. So he's with, he was approved for DDD already, and we have a support coordinator, and we tried, we submitted like an acceptance or returned an acceptance form with, he goes to Felician School in Lodi. So because I didn't know where really our direction is, so as parents, we were thinking in a way of, oh, let's just put him in the over 21 program. But I mean, like, down the line, like he's 21, somehow, he will start with something, with a job. So where do we put in, like, so we have the DDD now, all set for him. He's going to an over 21 program where they offer us like 5 days, 3 days, they said, or to 5 days. So if I want him to, or if you want him to like go and have an intake interview, or try to after the intake interview, or have some employment, do you think we could balance it between like the over 21 day program and then working also, or training for work that he might love? Because I know he loves, like Jen said, you're trying to find your niche, as the direction of where he's going. I know the direction later will be really for employment and being independent, or like having that. We might not achieve all, but at least I know that he will enjoy work because he's very good. He may not be verbally good with communicating his needs and stuff like that, but he can do skills, and he does work. And at school now, he had his job coaches. They've been exposed everywhere, like Great Clips, hair salons, like Burger King, all these different job opportunities, but that's in school. So now we're really, after graduation, where do we put him? Like, do I just put him solely on a day program, or combination with, stuff like that? So that's my question.
So, I mean, I think it's really up to you and the family to determine, if this is something that you want to do. Have I worked with individuals who have done both? Yeah, sure, it can be done. But I think the important question also is, do you feel like he can work independently right now in an integrated setting? Sometimes, right out of high school, they're going into a day program. The family's like, oh, I don't think he could work on his own. We have some safety concerns. I think he needs a lot of supervision. So maybe he goes and does the day program for a couple of years, and he chooses a day program that does have that vocational, training aspect to it, where they are doing some job sampling and working with a job coach. And then maybe you come back to us in a couple of years and say, yeah, I think he's ready right now. And then, yes, you could balance both. I've seen people do it. If you feel like he's ready now for employment, you say, yeah, he can do this independently and he can work and do a day program, then yeah, you can certainly, apply for services now.
How do parents navigate that? Because I think I understand what Maria's saying. I mean, the goal is employment, and probably as much employment as possible. And
Yeah.
so if I understand Maria, how should they like approach it? to get the guidance, to make those determinations.
I'm going to talk a lot about that, I think, when I talk about the DDD side of things.
Okay.
Good.
We've moved to a fee-for-service system at DDD, and that makes it much easier to be able to sort of have an a la carte of services, if you will, and be able to mix and match what they're doing throughout the day or throughout the week. And that can include services that are coming through funding with DVR. So somebody could be getting job development, pre-placement kinds of services from DVR and looking for a job, and at the same time be getting DDD services so that they're not sitting at home, or so that they're building more skills that would be marketable when they are going to be employed. Your son has had some things through Felician that sound really good in terms of experiences related to work to help him kind of figure out what might work for him. But it's also a good time, especially right now, and I would say this to Mary too, to sort of look at that discovery process and kind of focus on, it's, day-to-day life, we're not always focusing on what would be a good job for Jen, but to sort of focus on really starting to look at those kinds of things and understanding what direction he might want to be going in terms of employment, and figuring out where the pieces of the puzzle are still needed to help him get to that goal. So it may be a situation where, like Jess was saying, maybe he needs to build some more skills in order to get to whatever that job may be. I'm just going to make something up. Maybe he wants to do data entry, but he needs some more computer skills to be able to do that. This would be a time where he would be able to gain some of those skills, maybe from the DDD side of programs. And then once he has those skills developed, then, like Jess said, you can always go to DVR at that point. The nice thing with both of our services is that they're sort of, once you get to a certain age, you're eligible to go in and out of those services at any point of time. So it's not like, well, we tried that, never come back, so that's sort of fluid between each other. And you can get, one of the big myths out there is that you can't have DVR services and DDD services at the same time. That's just not true. You can, it just can't be the same service. So we could, and I'll talk about that during my piece too, but you couldn't be getting pre-placement services to help somebody find a job through DVR and then also get supported employment services from DDD to help you find a job, because that would be
okay.
you could get other services at the same time. A lot of the other questions may get answered when we go through this piece of it too. You'll sort of see, this is sort of where it comes, okay, Jess has talked about what DVR can do and how that works, and this is sort of how DDD fits into that puzzle too. And for some people, you may just want one or the other and not get both of those types of services, but a lot of people are tapping into both agencies for the services they need. So I'm going to do like an overview of the DDD system and how we get into it, and then I'll talk about the services we have available and where that fits in with the DVR side of things. So DDD is an adult service system, and that means that we serve people over the age of 21. We used to serve all the way across the board, but that changed in 2013 when our children's services moved over to the Department of Children and Families. So someone earlier said that their son or daughter was 20. So they would not be eligible for our services at this time. They have to be 21. But we do go through the intake process and allow that to happen when someone turns 18, because we don't want somebody to wait till their 21st birthday and try and go through eligibility when they actually need the services right at that time. So starting at age 18, somebody can go through the process to deem whether they're eligible for DDD or not. And that's a matter of going to their community services office and talking to the intake unit, and they'll help steer you through that process. I think I have a slide on it too later. But you wouldn't, even if you're deemed eligible at age 18 or 19 or 20, you wouldn't actually be able to access the services until you turn 21. And even then, it's mostly going to come after the educational entitlement. So after that graduation, when the person turns 21. And that's because the school system's supposed to be providing those services and supports until that point. We're also a Medicaid based system. So we're an adult service system and we're a Medicaid based system. And that change to being Medicaid based is fairly new also. And the reason for that is that everybody in our services will be on a program that's within a Medicaid waiver. And really what the waiver does is allow us to get federal funding for the services we provide. So for every dollar we put in for a service, we get $1 back with federal funding, which is huge. Didn't do that before. So there was a lot of money that was kind of left on the table that we weren't utilizing. So it's actually really a good thing that we're Medicaid based now. Every single person will be either in the community care program or the supports program, which is our 2 programs within the waiver. And then we get the federal match for all the services we're providing. But that means that everybody has to be Medicaid eligible. So also at age 18, we encourage people to get SSI if they can, because that's where they'll definitely get Medicaid. There are other ways to get Medicaid if they're not eligible for SSI, and those other ways can be acceptable for DDD too. And there's a whole bunch of information about that on our website. The other part of it is that our providers are actually Medicaid providers too. So the providers that do supported employment or rehabilitation or pre-vocational training or the other services you'll see a list of later on go through our system to become Medicaid and DDD approved providers in order to be able to deliver the service and get paid for it. The exception to that are sort of typical businesses that don't actually, their main mission is not serving people with disabilities. Their main mission is just being a business, and maybe a person with a disability is going to access that business. For them, we don't expect them to become Medicaid providers because they're not serving a bunch of people with disabilities. It wouldn't make sense for them to do that, but we have means for them to get paid through the fiscal intermediary. And I'll talk a little bit about that when I go through the services. We're also a fee-for-service system, which I alluded to a little bit earlier. And that's how I think one of the great things about being fee-for-service is that provides us with the ability to mix and match those services and be a la carte. Instead of, oh, we have a contract with this provider, that's where you're going for your services. We can now mix and match who's providing those services as well as what those services may be. Each service has a standardized rate that's associated with it. Services have to be prior authorized, and that's part of the Medicaid system. So I'll talk about, you get assigned to a support coordinator, which is basically your case manager, and they'll write a plan. And once that plan's approved, that's the prior authorization for the services. So within that plan, it's going to say, here's the provider that's doing the services, and here's what those services are going to be. And the individual has much more choice in the system in terms of who the provider is going to be and what those services are going to be, and they can change them if they're not happy with them, which is also a big thing. Previously, we were contract based, so you may end up with XYZ provider and not like them, and you would still be able to change your provider. It just wasn't as easy as it is now. But the money that was associated with your son or daughter would still be with XYZ agency. So they weren't getting any incentive to improve their program in terms of financial incentive anyway, with your son or daughter saying that we don't like you and we're leaving. In the fee-for-service system, the money goes with you. So when you say XYZ provider, you're not giving me what I need, you're not helping me get the services I need or helping my son or daughter with what he needs to be more independent or to get a job or whatever it might be, we're going to go to ABC agency instead. The money follows you to ABC agency, which is a big thing. The other thing is that you choose the support coordination agency that you'd like to work with if you want to, and you can change the support coordination agency, which again is like your case manager, if you're not happy with the services you're getting there. So the way that our system works is once someone's deemed eligible for our services, they get a budget that's attached to them, and that budget's based on what the score comes out to be on the New Jersey Comprehensive Assessment Tool, or the NJCAT. And that's going to say, sort of determine the level of support that somebody needs and attach that to a tier for the person. So we have tiers that go from A to E. Someone that's in tier A is going to need very minimal supports in our system and is probably just barely eligible for DDD services. Those are, a lot of those guys are going to college full time and maybe just need some help with daily supports and things like that. Someone who's in tier E is going to have much more extensive support needs. They usually have medical and behavioral kinds of things that go along with that. So the way that the budget will work is someone in tier A is going to get less money than somebody in tier E. And obviously as they incrementally go up from A to E, the budget gets larger. And that budget's going to then pay for what we categorize as employment and day services. So those are services to help them get a job, keep a job, as well as other services that typically take place during the day, so that that person's not sitting at home, so that person can continue to grow and learn and have new experiences. And then the other piece of that is if somebody is going to be working or is interested in working or has a job and their budget's not covering the support they need on the job site, additional funding can be requested just to keep that job. We want people to keep their jobs, and we don't want people to have to make decisions between working and other services and supports that they may need in order to be healthy and safe and grow in their lives. So there's a mechanism that the support coordinator can request additional funding just for employment. So here's the slide on support coordination and the way that that works. So when someone's deemed eligible for DDD services and is 21 or older, they will be assigned to a support coordination agency, and that support coordination agency serves as the case manager. We switched from having case management within DDD itself, and now it's an outside provider that we provide funding for. They're a Medicaid approved provider. They go through extensive training and other kinds of qualifications in order to become a support coordination agency, and they get funded through us. They use what we call a person-centered planning approach to look at, again, hopes and dreams and interests and skills and things that are characteristics of that person, to get to really know that person and then look at that to lead to whatever it is that they're going to do to hopefully have what I like to refer to as a meaningful life. And hopefully that includes employment, but for some people it doesn't always. And that's the tool, when I was saying before that I can look at that documentation and kind of then put the dots together and often come up with potential jobs for that person. That's that person-centered planning tool. Sometimes I'll look at it and that'll give me interesting information about the person, enjoying their pets, or, they always like to go visit grandma at the assisted living house on a Saturday. So maybe something with senior citizens, or, when mom and dad get sick, they're always taking care of, them. I sort of try to glean information from that, or they really love going bowling, and maybe there's something in there. And it doesn't necessarily always have to be employment related. In my mind, things employment related naturally, but it could also be things that are like volunteering or what they're going to do within their day program during the course of the day because it's of interest to them. From that information, the support coordinator with the individual and the family are going to develop what we call the Individualized Service Plan. We always have I's and P's in these things. So there's the IEP, the IPE, and the ISP. We should just call them all the same thing because they're all actually very similar, which is to identify what an outcome is for that person in different areas of their life, what services do they need and supports do they need to get to that outcome, and what provider is going to do it. So, if employment is an outcome that they're looking to achieve, what services do they need to help them get that? Okay, and under the DDD system, maybe they need supported employment. Who's going to be the provider of supported employment services, and how's that going to look? And that information should be coming from that person-centered planning process. That plan is going to link the individual to the providers they're going to use and the services they're going to get. And that plan becomes what I talked about before with the prior authorization. So once it's in the plan and approved, the provider can actually deliver the services and get reimbursed for them. The other thing that the support coordinator does is monthly monitoring. So they have to do at least a monthly phone call. They have to do a quarterly face-to-face visit, and they have to do an annual home visit during the course of the year in order to really look at how are those services going? Are they happy with those services? Are your providers doing what they said they were going to do? Are you happy with your providers? Do we need to change anything based on life changes or just how things are going? Like I mentioned before, the individual, the family can choose their support coordination agency. So we have a selection form that's on our website. You can actually indicate your first choice and your second choice on there. And that's in case the first choice isn't available for whatever reason, we'll go to the second choice. You can also just say, just give me one. I don't want to go through the research and figure it all out, just assign one to me. And that we would then, our computer auto assigns the support coordination agency. And again, you can change that support coordination agency at any time if you're not happy with them and want to change it. So we've had that circumstance certainly where the individual or family just hasn't worked with that particular support coordination agency, so they've changed it. And that's just a matter of submitting the form again, and there's a place where you can select that you want to change your support coordination agency. So I'm going to talk about the services and supports that we have available and how that ties into DVR. Okay, so these are all the services that are available through DDD. I am not going to go through each one. I sometimes categorize them. So obviously there's a lot of services. And one of the things that's been the benefit of having these waiver services and getting the federal match is that we've been able to offer more services than we have in the past. So things like the therapies we didn't offer before, and now we can. Physical therapy, occupational therapy, speech, language, and hearing therapy. Those were not available previously, but are now. But I'm not going to get too much into that, although obviously those are things that can be helpful for somebody to get a job if those are things that are, preventing them from being able to work. The ones that are related to employment, so we have supported employment, we have career planning, and we have pre-vocational training. The first thing I want to say is we talked about sort of DVR versus DDD. For any of our employment services, the individual would have to go to DVR first to see if the funding is available through the Division of Voc Rehab for that particular service. So if somebody is interested in working competitively in the general workforce, the first place to go for that service is through DVRS. And DVRS will go through their process that Jessica laid out earlier to determine if the person's eligible and what services he or she may be eligible for. What they then do, the counselor will then send us what we call the F3 form. It's the infamous F3. And that will indicate to us at DDD, here's what Jennifer is eligible through DVR for. Well, we've identified that Jennifer's eligible for supported employment services, so we're going to provide that through DVR. That would mean, okay, DDD is not covering that, at least at this time. Or it may say, and we've had circumstances with, maybe DVR is going to pay for training or classes at college or something like that, which would mean that's what they're providing funding for, so they're not going to be providing funding for supported employment. Maybe the person still does want to work while they're going to college. We would be able to provide the funding for supported employment at that point because DVR is not paying for it. Or maybe it's somebody that's going to DVR and they're just not at the point where they're going to be able to, as Jessica was talking about, sort of fade out in terms of job coaching. It looks like it's somebody that's going to need one-to-one job coaching for a much more extensive period of time than DVR can provide funding for, or maybe they are going to need one-to-one job coaching for the rest of the time that they're working. Those would be people that maybe DVR would say aren't eligible for supported employment, and then DDD would pick up the funding for that. The tricky part is always that DDD always pays for what we call long-term follow-along. So Jess talked about that 90 days and that somebody can become stable on the job site, and that's usually when the funding from DVR is going to end. If they need continued job coaching in terms of somebody coming in and checking in to see how things are going throughout the course of the month, or just every now and then, just to see, are the things we put into place in terms of accommodation still working? Is the training still in effect and clicking? Or, sometimes a new supervisor comes in and changes everything around, or they get promoted to doing other tasks and they have to learn how to do them. We call that follow along, and that would be always covered by DDD in our system if the person's eligible for DDD services. So start with DVR for employment services. They will determine what they're eligible through for DVR. If they're not eligible for stuff right away through DVR, DDD can pick up the funding. And eventually, if it's supported employment, DDD is going to pick up the funding if they need follow-along. Career planning, that sort of career counseling stuff that Jessica was talking about. Again, if DVR has that available, they're going to get that there first. If not, they can get that through us. And then pre-vocational training is a service we have where somebody can really, I talk about it as marketable skills that can be built through an agency to help them with that. So a lot of times our guys can do the job really well, but they don't end up keeping the job because of what we call those marketable skills or soft skills. Maybe they have weird social interactions with customers that have led to them just losing their job, or they don't take direction well from their supervisor. And again, by the way, this happens with people without disabilities too. They don't take direction well from their supervisor and get all huffy and yell at them every time that they do that. those are kinds of skills that pre-vocational training can work on. It's not building a skill specific to a job. So they're not going to learn how to repair air conditioners, but they would learn skills that are going to, across the board in terms of employment, help them be a better employee. You know, maybe they're going to learn basic computer skills, how to use Word or Excel or something like that. They're not going to learn how to be a computer programmer. That would be a different kind of program that they would go through. We can go through these because I just said all this stuff. I will say that we have supported employment individual and we have supported employment small group. Individual is that typical, we're going to help you get a job and then provide you with the support you need to keep that job. Small group is a group of individuals that are usually attached to a particular agency, and they may go to do different jobs at different sites. So often it's like a mobile crew that does landscaping, for example, and there's a group of 2 to 8 people that maybe they just need a little more support than being on a job by themselves at this point, and they're helping to grow those skills so that they can be more independent. And I went through these already too. Career planning, and the next one's pre-vocational training. So we'll skip through them. And you'll have these slides so you can read through them more extensively too as you go through. Services that obviously help somebody to be successfully employed but aren't specifically employment services. So we have a service that's called individual supports. If someone's on the community care program, and it's called community-based supports if they're in the supports program. Why we gave them different names, I don't know. It's just to confuse everybody, I think. And that's a one-to-one support that can be in the person's home or in the community. And the reason I mention it now in terms of employment is for some people, that's what they really need the one-to-one for. They don't really need a one-to-one job coach to be on the job site with them all day. That's really looking at helping them learn how to do a job or how to work with the employer to help them understand how to deliver instructions to them or whatever. It's really that they need someone to help them with lunch, or they need someone to make sure that they don't run out of the job site outside when they, you know, because maybe they're more impulsive and do that, or to help remind them to stay on task, because they'll start sort of not that any of us ever do this during the course of the workday, daydreaming or something like that. Or maybe they need to, when they finish what they're working on, need to be reminded to go ask for what their next task is going to be. That's not really job coaching. That's more of this community-based or individual support that can be on the job site with them for a one-to-one, and maybe there for the life of their job if they have to be. Goods and services is a very wide category. As it relates to employment, we can pay for classes. So it may be a situation where somebody needs some additional training to be able to do the job. Again, DVR would probably be the first place they'd go for that if they can get the funding there. But if it's not available through DVR, then DDD can pay for that. We would also, through goods and services, is where if someone has fees that are associated with getting hired to the job, drug testing, or they had to get a uniform, we could use goods and services to help pay for that. We also have assistive technology and transportation funding and behavioral supports, vehicle mods, and a personal emergency response system, which is the I've fallen and I can't get up system, that can be helpful when it comes to working also, just to help if the person needs, obviously, those skills. Obviously, transportation is a huge one, because, you know, if you can't get to the job, then that sort of defeats the purpose altogether. So we do provide funding to help people purchase the transportation service. And I'm not going to go through all these. This was on that other list that had all the different services to it. But these are the things that, again, can be done in sort of conjunction with the DVR services. So I can't remember who it was, if it was Mary or Maria, who was talking about they're going to go to Felician 21 over program, and now what do we do? Can we just do they just do that? Do they also try and get a job at the same time? That's what this is. So that's a rehabilitation program. And somebody can do, obviously, all of those things at the same time. It's like great, because in the past, I think families chose day rehabilitation or day program services because they're working and need to have somebody caring for their sons and daughters throughout the course of the day while they're at work. And oftentimes the job is, at least, especially in the beginning, going to be something that's part-time and maybe just a few hours during the week or a few days during the week. And what happens on those other days when they're not working or during those hours when they're not working. And that's where these additional services can come in is, maybe they do go to the day program a few days a week and they're working the other couple days, or they go a few hours a day and they're working the other hours during the day. And that's fine. You can do that with DVR funding as well as DDD funding at the same time. And then the last side, things that might be helpful for you. We do have a DDD communication that provides information regularly about what's going on. If you're interested in getting that email regularly, you can sign up for it. The information's there. Obviously, that's become extremely important now because we're giving a lot of COVID-19 related updates through that email listserv too. And then we have manuals of policies and procedures for the supports program as well as the community care program. And that will go much more into depth about the different services that we have available and what they provide. That's section 17 of either of those manuals. On the provider search database, I'll just point that out too, because that's where, when you're looking for different providers in our system, they're all in that provider database. So you can filter it by Bergen County, supported employment, and the different Medicaid approved providers that can provide that service will come up. So that's the DDD side of things.
So I'll actually end the show because it might be easier for me to manage questions.
So I'll remind everybody, if you want to raise your hand, you can go to the bottom and click on participants.
Thank you.
And at the bottom of the pop-up, there is an icon that says raise hands.
So I've got a new message. Will the Division of Developmental Disabilities offer housing assistance in the fee-for-service system? It's in chat. What are the qualifying diagnoses to get someone eligible? I am a U.S. Navy vet taking care of my son who is 19 on the autism spectrum. Please advise the process.
Sure. So there are several ways that housing assistance can be provided. The one that is probably the one people know the most about is like our group homes and things like that, that are the staffing is provided, the funding for the staffing is provided through the Division of Developmental Disabilities, and they're sort of DDD sponsored, for lack of a better term, homes. In order to get into those homes, the person would have to, first of all, be eligible for DDD, but they'd also have to be on the community care program, which is one of those 2 waiver programs. The thing about the community care program, though, is there's a waiting list for it, as well as you have to meet a higher level of care than just being eligible for DDD. They look to see if there's the institutional level of care, which would mean that if they weren't getting services and supports through DDD, they'd be living in an institution like a developmental center or a nursing home or something like that. So that's one way that housing could be provided through DDD. The other way, which is newer in some ways and definitely newer in terms of the fee-for-service system, is that we can provide housing vouchers to help subsidize the cost of rent and other kinds of things like that. So somebody could be on the supports program, for example, which doesn't pay for group homes or other kinds of licensed residential settings, but they could be getting a voucher to offset the cost of rent for the apartment they're living in. And then they can also still, depending on what their budget is, go through that list of waiver services and have somebody come into their house to help with daily living skills, hygiene, cooking, budgeting, other kinds of things that they may need during the course of the day or the week.
Any other questions? What about finding job coaches? Is that something that the DDD and DVRS help with, or?
So that was the provider database I talked about at that last slide. Individuals and families can go into that database and at least narrow the list down to who serves their area. And then we can't really, DDD can't say, oh, you should go to this provider. They're the best ones. They'll get you, we get in trouble if we do stuff like that. So I recommend talking to other family members or other parents. The Bog Center has been putting together some really good documents on how to choose providers and what questions to ask. There's also a lot of, I was going to say during this time of year, not this year, transition fairs and other kinds of things where There's a bunch of different providers that are available to provide information, and you can kind of talk to a bunch of them all at the same time and figure out which one might be best served for you. My thing, in terms of supported employment and job coaches, I recommend really talking to the providers about what types of jobs they've gotten for the people they serve, the types of hours people are working, the salaries people are making, because there's sort of a spectrum in terms of our providers and how well they do with that. We have some providers that, 90% of the people that they serve are going to be working in food service because that's sort of what their niche is. If your son or daughter does not want to work in food service, that probably isn't going to be the best provider for you to go to job coaching for. Whereas there will be other providers of supported employment who have a larger variety of types of jobs that people have gotten through their support. I don't know if Jess has anything to add.
Yeah, so our provider list is not very long. So we don't have like a huge list, especially if they, are a DDD consumer. We have to make sure that the provider is also a DDD funded provider. So that list is really short for us. And the counselors do make recommendations to the clients, because we know them the best. We work with these vendors all the time, day in and day out. So we know what types of jobs they're getting. We know which vendors have good connections in the community with different types of, jobs and businesses. We know which ones are working really well and which work best with which disability and that type of thing. So we don't tell them which one to use, but we can offer our, suggestions and recommendations and our input. And our list is not very big. So yeah, it's still up to the client and the family, obviously, but we can certainly guide them and give them some feedback.
So we do have a question here from Donna. So let me unmute her.
Okay. Oh, hi. Thank you. Jessica, this is for you. We did see you one time, and my daughter's now working at the Haney Center 3 days a week. And I think she's happy there. But I am looking for 2 days to do a day program for her, something different. But when you were talking about the project search, where you have training, say, at Holy Name or the other hospital, would that be something she could do 2 days a week, or do you have like a set schedule? No, it has to be.
Yeah, it's Monday through Friday. It's like 8 o'clock to 3 o'clock in the afternoon. It's all day, and anyone who wants to do project search, the hope is that when they're done, they're going to work competitively, integrated, 16 hours a week. They have, pretty strict guidelines as to what the expectations are afterwards. So there really has to be that ability to work that type of, schedule and that amount of hours a week and everything.
As a mother, like you always think, well, could she do better, or could she?
Sure.
Her speech is her difficulty. She had a brain damage at birth, so her speech is not a good speech. So as a parent, you always think, oh, how is she going to make it? And I'm sorry now, because I think I should have given her a shot. So I don't, as a mother, you don't know which direction to go. I mean, she's happy at the Haney Center, but could she, she's a good artist. She's a painter. She likes ceramics. I mean, could she ever work in an art studio? I don't know. I know what I would like her to be, but then asking her what she wants, I don't know. I don't know. It's the same, same thing. And it's hard because you want to, is it me that wants her to be that way, or just, it's a balance, I guess.
Okay. Pre-vocational training might be a good option for her under the DDD side of services, because that's going to be hopefully focusing more on employment than maybe daily living skills or things like that. And some of the providers that do pre-vocational training do things like volunteering. So maybe you could volunteer at an art studio or in a museum or something. And that could be a way to help figure out if that is a good avenue for her or not.
Is it something she would have to do 5 days, or could she keep her job? Okay.
Nothing with DDD is nothing is you have to do 5 days anymore. It used to be, but we're not like that anymore. It's all pick and choose, do what, mix and match what works for that individual.
We have a sports coordinator. Would that be something he could help as far as pre-vocational training?
Absolutely.
So I would contact them and.
Yep.
Good. Thank you. Okay. That sounds great. Thank you so much.
So I put up the Bog Center here too that Jennifer had mentioned, support employment. And I'll include the link in follow-up with the video links to you guys that, just showing the different things that they have on here. As well as the, and it's already on the slides showing the, oops, that's not it. The employment bank. There we go. That's the one.
Yeah, so that's our provider search database. And like I was saying, if you go to filter, you can filter based on service. You can filter based on county. So you could pull up.
So like supported employment, individual, or
pull up pre-vocational training in Bergen County or whatever county you live in.
Bergen, yeah.
The different providers in that area.
Okay, thank you.
Sure.
Oh, so you collect county as well as the service.
Or yeah, it depends, how small you want to make the list. So
right.
Pick service, you can pick county, you can do one or the other.
Oh, got it. There we go.
So those are all the providers of supported employment in Bergen County.
So
one of the things that drives me crazy is it does list, if there's more than one location for the same provider, it'll list the same. So as you see, Arc of Bergen Passaic's listed 2 times we saw it there. It's probably listed like 10 more times because it has so many different locations.
Okay.
But it's really just one provider. It's one of my pet peeves that I keep complaining about. I was going to use a different word. Complaining to our IT staff, but they have so many other things going on that they haven't gotten to fix that yet. But anyway.
Any other questions?
While we're waiting for people to raise their hands if they have questions, I just would like to take a moment. Thank all of you guys for coming on to the webinar today, and thank Anne for putting it all together. Anytime I get to talk about employment, I'm very excited. So I'm very excited about it too, even in this difficult time. Oh, and one of the things I also wanted to mention, and I have mixed feelings about this because of everything that's going on, but there are a lot of job opportunities right now.
You know what? Thank you, because I was going to bring that up.
That really meet things that our guys are really good at. And obviously you have to look at that person's health and vulnerabilities related to health and make sure that it's going to be something where CDC standards are being followed. But there's one provider in particular that gives me an update every week of what they're doing, not just me, a bunch of people. And they've been very successful with getting a good number of people jobs in the past few weeks because of those essential jobs that nobody thought of as essential probably a few weeks ago, but we all realize how important they are now and actually work really well for some of our individuals with intellectual and developmental disabilities.
I was thinking of that too. Can you give examples of some of the jobs, Jen?
Most of them have been grocery stores.
Yep.
So, and they aren't putting specific, like what the specific job title is, whether it's cashier or bagging or stocking shelves. So I'm not sure.
Amazon as well.
Liquor stores need help with packing stuff and unpacking, and
so there's the COVID-19 website that's specific to New Jersey actually has a job posting piece to it, which I should know by heart now because the governor says it, I think, in every single press conference he does. I know I have that link somewhere, so Anne, I can send it to you if you don't have it so that you can include that as a follow-up too.
Okay. It's on the COVID-19 link. Well, if you give me the exact one, that'll be good.
Yeah.
I do check the county count, but anyway. Is there, and I think you both alluded to it a little bit before, just what people could be doing now, even if they're not able to be out looking for jobs, but just taking advantage of of really being creative with the discovery process. And I can add some links, like there are some amazing educational links for online and remote learning that are really kind of diverse. in terms of the way they engage people. So there may be some things that you find that could actually be helpful with skill development, for example, that you weren't thinking of.
Yeah, I could also give you a link to a website that we use. I mean, it's not going to work on skills, but it could work on like job exploration, trying to develop a job goal, trying to figure out what things they like to do and what jobs they like. It's called njcan.org. I know some of the schools use it too, but it's a website that we use in the office a lot when people are like, well, I have no idea what I want to do, or maybe I want to do this and I have no idea what it entails. It gives us a chance to look up different types of jobs and just, learn about them. So you could always, if you can't improve upon skills right now, you can maybe do just some searches to see, would I like to do this? Would I like to do that? Does this seem interesting?
The other thing is to think out of the box in terms of like, sometimes, someone has what may seem as an idiosyncratic interest. I mean, I did the Bug Center Supported Employment Specialist training course, and we did this networking exercise, and a woman that I was paired with, she said, after we were like sharing events, because what you do is you have this like list of different industries, and, check off who someone that in that, if you know someone in that industry, and then you shared next to the two people, we were in small groups. So then anyone who industry I didn't know, if she had contacts, well, then all of a sudden my network has expanded. And, while we were discussing with the whole group, she said, I've got this guy with autism, and he has the flight paths in and out of Newark Airport for United Airlines memorized. Is there a future for him? I don't know, he's really bright, but his parents and I are stumped. And I was like, you know what? My son is actually an aeronautical safety specialist. So the school he went to knows everything about aeronautics, and, he works for an airline. So don't have a ready answer, but at least was able to connect them with people for them to explore how to develop, how that particular ability could maybe be developed. And if it can, I don't know the answer yet, but they're still in the discovery phase. But I think that's, the possibilities are really broad when we're willing to like really open up the top of the box.
And I think that's something we don't do enough of, is tap into the networks that we have. And one of the unfortunate things obviously is that sometimes people with intellectual and developmental disabilities don't have a big network of their own to tap into. And that would be the place to start, is their own network. But friends and families, our networks as professionals that are supporting them, those are all ways that, when I did training, I used to do that same kind of exercise and just say, okay, take a minute and write down everybody you know, all your friends, all your family, the place you go to get your hair done, the place where you go grocery shop, like everything. And the list you can come up with so quickly is so extensive that, when you start having those conversations, you realize, oh, wait, I happen to know somebody that is, in the DJ business and would maybe, help them to be able to do that as their career, if that's something they're interested in. Or, we often don't think of who we know ourselves to tap into that. And the very first training I ever went through with supported employment, the trainer said that he used to talk about that all the time. And somebody once raised their hand and said, well, why would I do that to my friends and families that have businesses? And he said, what do you mean? Why wouldn't you do that to give them an excellent employee that's going to be like a superstar and help them run their business better and meet their bottom line better? And I think that's sometimes we have to shift the way we think about people with disabilities working. And it's not the people on this Zoom thing right now. It's sometimes people outside and sometimes professionals. I think I may have even told Anne this story. There's an organization called APSI that's like a membership organization for professionals in this field primarily. And I was at their national conference a few years ago, and Walgreens was there talking about their initiative to hire people with disabilities. And then they were talking about a new thing they were starting up, which was a training program for people to work in their stores. Previously, they were doing more warehouse kinds of things, and they were going to train individuals with intellectual and developmental disabilities on being cashiers at their stores, which also meant they were stocking shelves and doing other things. And it was interesting that in that workshop, the business people were trying to convince the professionals in supported employment that their guys could do this. it was the professionals that were saying, well, wait, I don't think that the people I work with could work the cash register. And you're saying they have to be able to, that's part of the training process, and they have to be able to do that as part of the training. And the people from Walgreens were saying, I bet you they can. We can make accommodations and figure out ways for them to do that. You know, they don't need to count change. The machine spits the change out for them, like other kinds of things. And it was interesting that those of us that were in the field were the ones that were needing to be convinced about the potential and the ability and the skills that the people we were supporting have.
There's
So.
some really good, I'll include the video links. There's like 3 videos that I really, really like that do a lot of what Jen's talking about, sharing those possibilities. And it's Tim Hortons and it's Walgreens. And then there's a gentleman with cerebral palsy that is a financial geek too, that talks about things. Okay, so Maria has a question. So let's, Maria.
Hi, Jen, since you were talking about, you know, both the DDD and DVRS, and also Jess, maybe you can. So what I'm saying, if we live in Bergen County and like, you know, with regards to employment and like trying to train our sons or daughters or our kids to go to work, and like when we mentioned about Walgreens, you know, I was kind of happy because I said, oh, there's a Walgreens in every county and, you know, near our house or that. So what do you suggest? Do we go to start with? Do I apply for to DVRS for my son, or maybe to start with, if he's going to the over 21 program, then maybe on the weekends volunteer in the library, or go to Walgreens and go there ourselves? And what's the?
I think in some ways it's all of the above.
Oh, okay.
What works best for you. What I will say is I do not usually recommend that families go out to Walgreens and try and help their sons and daughters get jobs, unless you have a specific connection there.
Okay.
I usually leave that up to the job coaches and the job developers to do, because again, parents are already so busy that, you know, adding that, and I'm not saying this about you, but there are sometimes parents that get a little too involved, I'll say, on the employment side, and I've seen people lose jobs because mom and dad were too busy in that.
The other thing I would recommend investigating the highest possibility first, you know, and maybe it's going to work and maybe that's not going to be, so starting with DVRS perhaps, you know, in terms of, you know, what would be the possibilities, and working out that, you know, maybe there are some things that need to be learned or developed in the process, but I think someone else had already mentioned, I can't remember who it was, but, you know, maybe hadn't had high enough expectations at the beginning. And I think that oftentimes people stretch to, you know, what the higher the expectations, as long as they're reasonable, right? So we got to be reasonable, but, you know, with higher expectations, there's more opportunity to grow and stretch, as opposed to, and then see what, have, you know, people like Jess and Jen help you figure out what the best path is.
And I think it's important to, you know, you had talked earlier about him being involved in different employment related programs within his school, and really like look at what were the things that worked for him there, what were the things that interested him there. Okay. Is it something that, you know, could be a potential job for him or not? You know, I mean, yeah, Walgreens may be hiring in your area and that would be great, but that doesn't necessarily mean that that's what's going to work for him or that he's going to enjoy working there, right? So I think sometimes we look to typical businesses that we know are hiring. People ask me all the time, can you give me a list of businesses that hire people with disabilities? And I probably could give a list, but now I'm limiting somebody to that particular list, and there could be something else that's more like what Anne was saying, more in tune with what that person could do and experience and be really good at.
Thank you. Okay.
Any other questions?
I think that went so quickly.
Oh,
I can't believe it's like 9 o'clock already.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
So, well, really, thank you all for checking in, and I'm happy that the technology worked and I worked the technology reasonably well. We did record, but no, we didn't record the gallery view. We didn't record the people, but just to be able to listen to it again and watch it, that will be available. And unless there's anything else, does anyone else have a question? I think I'm just gonna, then I guess we should say goodnight.
Thank you so
Thank
much.
you.
Thank
And
you. Thank you.
Thank you.
so great. Let's see, one more question. Let's see, do more of this. Oh, so so John is saying just to be great to do more of this in the future. Well, maybe we can start a supported employment support group.
It's awesome.
All right. Have a great night, everyone.
Thank you.
Everybody,
Bye.
thank you.
Take care.
Bye, everyone.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye.